Hello, everyone. Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to my weekly behind-the-scenes DM-only live stream, Crafting Annihilation, which I build, write, and prepare for our next session of Tomb of Annihilation. If you are playing characters Mannix, Celeste, Gillian, George, or Theron, avert thine eyes and ears. This is not meant for you, but for the rest of you, welcome. We stream our D&D sessions live on YouTube every Friday evening. You can watch all of our D&D live series as well as reviews and Let's Plays on my YouTube page and read weekly session recaps at roguewatson.com. You can follow me on Twitter at roguewatson and join our official Discord discussion group. Invite link in the description below. If you'd like to support the channel, please check out patreon.com/roguewatson. Shoutouts to platinum patrons Andrew, Richard, Joe, Will, Tiny Dancer, Nick, Andy, and Chris. And gold patrons RPG Papercrafts, Charming Grenade, Pretty Boy Numa, Marco Stade, Vicente, Gilberto, Sean, AK, Cert to be Adam, Dead Lizard Lounge, Sam, Ross, Lumpy Spuds, and Jerome. Thank you all very much for your support. Our campaign, we use Roll20.net for streaming. I use Open Broadcaster software with Streamlabs. Hello, all of you wonderful people. Hope everyone is staying safe and sane during these insane times. Aussie, Blanky, Jerome, Infernus, I see you all. Andy, welcome. That is one advantage I've noticed. We do have some different folks, slightly, because of the time zone difference, which is an advantage of streaming at wildly different times. All right, so we are in the Tomb of Annihilation. We are in level 2, and once again, we had an entire session in level 2 of the dungeon, which confirms the fact that we've slowed way down in our progress. Level 1 was really like boom, boom, boom. The players did so well. We hardly had any combat. Just flying colors across the board. And all of a sudden, level 2, bit of a slog here. We've kind of slowed way down. We did the first half of the entire dungeon pretty quickly. You know, they did the wine room really well. They got out of the slod fight. And then all of a sudden, you know, Papazotto's fight took a while. And now this fight in Wither's office took, I think, over an hour and a half of playtime. And this was a completely optional fight. I basically tried to explain to the players, hey, you do not have to fight here. In fact, this is a social encounter. You can chat with Withers and, you know, learn about whatever you want. They were given 3 questions that they could ask whatever they want, which the questions weren't too bad. It was... I don't know. I feel like maybe they could have spent a little bit more time looking at their quest log. I know one person said, like, well, they should have asked about, like, the skeleton keys and what all of that stuff meant and where they are, and that would have probably been the most useful information. Asking about the soulmonger was probably a good idea, but unfortunately, I didn't really have a good answer to that because there isn't really a special way of destroying the soulmonger. It's just a thing that you can basically attack in that room. So I guess I could have been a little bit more cryptic with it. Asking about where a Serac is, like... He's, I don't know, man, he's an interdimensional lich. Like, he can fucking be anywhere all the time. He's everywhere you want to be. You know, if he did, and I think I mentioned if he deigns to come here at all, it's to, like, check on his pet project in the deepest levels. So, kind of a vague question there. And then I think the third question was just like, how are you? Like, it was just, they just kind of ran out of ideas. So, I do think it was a fun moment to be able to chat. But, and I did have a feeling that my players, when presented with combat as an option, are usually going to take combat as a solution. I have to kind of bend over backwards to explain why combat might not be a good idea in some cases. But on the other hand, at some point, you got to let them, you know, make their bed and lie in it too. I can't just say no, no, no. So they were like, well, we definitely want to kill him because I think that was one badass line Mannix had is like, well, you know, when I asked what your favorite room is, and he said, the room where we found the guy who made all this shit and killed him. It's like, that's kind of a cool line. And I did mention, and I got a lot of comments from all of you, like, well, I thought you wanted Withers to escape and not die here. But I don't say I changed my mind, but I basically changed the rules of how Withers operates, which I even mentioned this in the dialogue where he's like, I don't care if I die. Like, Serac will just bring me back. Like, it doesn't really matter. Like, I'm, you know, undead, basically an immortal servant of Withers. My life doesn't really matter. So that's kind of the direction that I changed. Instead of it going with the hard mechanical rules of, oh, if you kill this guy, then he's dead. It was more of a case of, okay, instead of him having to use an action to actually use his amulet and teleport away, instead, the amulet is like a get out of jail free card, and if his body dies, the amulet itself will teleport him away, and then he can basically pop back out of that. I'm picturing like the there's probably a better example of this, but like the original Men in Black movie where they shoot the alien dude's like head and his head grows back and he's like, that really hurt. That's kind of what I'm picturing Withers. Like he basically comes back and he's just like, oh, that was really painful and unfortunate. That's annoying. So Withers definitely doesn't like to get killed. That's why he preferred like the party move along. But ultimately, that was the change I made. Is like I can still, or maybe I won't use him. I don't know. Maybe I'm sick of Withers, but is basically let him escape using the amulet as a free. If you get down to 0 hit points, then it whisks you away, and at some point after whatever time period, kind of like almost like a flame skull or like basically a lich that you can just keep coming back. But in this case, it's a lich that's basically restoring him. Can restore his body, although he doesn't have his mask now. So he wasn't even a big factor, and as I anticipated, he didn't even survive, I think, but one freaking round. And I was really like looking through his spells, going, okay, what's he going to be able to use that's really going to matter? I probably could have flung like a lightning bolt down the hallway or done something, more exotic, but I don't know. With Colette stabbing in the back, I thought it was a cool move to turn around and try to use that blight spell, which actually went off pretty well. Despite her high constitution, I did like 30 some damage. That was pretty nice. So he got to do something, which was cool. And that's the only way. Otherwise, he would have spent that first action just leaving, and the party had to deal with the enemies, which I did end up using the Swarm of Crawling Claws as bigger stat blocks, which came from that Monster Manual Expanded that I reviewed a week or two ago. As well as the flesh golems, which means they stuck around for a long time in this fight, and it lasted quite a long time. But this was partially not. Get your ass upstairs. I'm going to get lettuce plant. Okay. My wife is walking downstairs now, listening. Working from home, all of us are. What happened to this fight was George fucking left. There has not been a come to Jesus meeting, come to Timora, come to Helm, whatever you want to call it, about George, which at this point we're all very good friends. So there hasn't been any kind of animosity or tension or anything that I think might normally come with a group of people playing D&D. But I would have given fucking Raymond the third degree about this if I was a player. I'd be like, dude, what the hell? You're going to start this a whole other fight while we're in this battle? Like, that is insane. It is a terrible, terrible thing to do. Like, I get that you want to start your thing. Now, obviously, as the DM, I could have put a kibosh on this. I could have had, George was going to leave, and he was trying to lure this creature in to deal with it. And ultimately, I was like, well, shit, he really wants this to happen. Like, he really wants to fight this Slod. I was picturing, okay, the Slod's going to leave. This was 2 sessions ago, I think. And I'm going to have it come back during a really opportune moment where it's going to be able to sneak up and throw a fireball at the players or deal with them when they're separated or something, like maybe even a level or 2 further down. I'm picturing several sessions from now. But George has it in his soul that he needs to deal with this creature ASAP. And he literally walked out, and now that he knows that the thing is inhabited by the Grung goddess, so it doubly has to kill this thing. And he used a kind of clever way to do it. He basically lured it with a bunch of treasure because he knows that the Grung is very greedy and would probably still stick around the heroes because they've got all the treasure. So I had the Grung appear. And George kicked its ass by himself for 2 or 3 rounds. I think the first round, I'm trying to remember what all I did. Did I even regular attack him? I think I tried to cast Fear, and he made the save. And then by the second round, I don't even know if I regularly attacked him or not. I swear he was doing just so much damage to me, like 20 plus attacks. And because he was knocking the Slod prone, he was able to get a sneak attack off because he had advantage, which was a good combo. He was using everything and brought me down to where I literally did the Predator move. Chris called me on it. I did the Predator move where it was like, fuck it, it's going to suicide itself now and unleash a fireball right in everybody's face. Which I did finally realize that the Slod is not only resistant to fire, so that's actually not a bad idea for it to do anyway, but I forgot about its regen. So if you notice at some point in the session, I actually added like 20-some hit points back to the Slod because I forgot about the regen where it gets 10 hit points around, which still, even with that, I thought George was going to freaking solo this thing, which is nuts. I was shocked. I was like, well, that's going to be the end of the Slod, but kind of a cool story for George, I guess, that he just walked out and soloed this powerful creature. But karma finally balanced itself out, and on the third round, George missed all of his attacks. And on the Slod's turn, I tried the Fear again, which I think it can do. So I don't have the character sheet pulled up, do I? I think it can do 2 or 3 of those spells a day. I hope I was actually following the rules on that. I tend to not even pay attention because creatures don't last that many rounds to have to do bookkeeping. 2 each. So no, I probably couldn't have actually done that a third time, but I might have cheated there. I think I feared him first, then fireballed, and then tried to fear again. And the second fear went off, and that one feared him away. And at this point, the Slod is just trying to escape because it had barely any life left. But there was the fine print where it causes you to drop your weapon. So the Slod fucking picked up his thorn sword and ran away with it. So like all kinds of things happened that I didn't expect in this session, which is, that's D&D in a nutshell. But first, I did not expect. I did expect the players to start a fight here. I was hoping they wouldn't. But I did expect them to start the fight with Withers. I did not expect George to not be in that fight, which made that fight last a lot longer and be a lot deadlier than it should have been. And B, I did not expect George to fight the Gray Slod in this altercation. And then, obviously, I had no idea if the Slod was going to kill George, if George was going to kill the Slod, or if what ended up happening is they just tussle together and then they both go their separate ways, and now I've got the fucking Slod alive again. I was almost here's what I was thinking during the session. When George was pummeling it, and the Slod was going to unleash a fireball, and I thought the Slod was going to die, I thought it was going to be really fucking funny if after George kills the Slod, meanwhile the other party is in Withers' office, if they find the control gem, and then I do go ahead and tell them, oh, by the way, this gem would have controlled the Slod. That would have been really funny, and I was totally going to do that had George killed the Slod. I would have been like, oh, here's this magic gem that had you guys found, and had George not gone after and killed the Slod, you guys could have controlled this creature. That would have been really funny. Unfortunately, the Slod survived, so I may have to go back to my modification of what the control gem can do. Or maybe I won't, because George would still want to kill the damn thing. They could just use the Slod to summon it, and George can kill it all over again. But at this point, I'm going to leave it to the chat to try and see what all your thoughts are about it. But how much more do I even want to use this thing? Because it's kind of slowing down everything else. I was picturing having it, appear once to harass the party, or maybe a couple times as like a fireball, but George is adamant about dealing with this loose thread. Yeah, the actual fight was really horrendous. Everybody got down to 50% or fewer hit points. You can see Gillian at 19, Kaless at 33, Mannix at 28. They are definitely going to need a short rest here. I mean, Theron even got down to half hit points, and he had that 50 hit point Allosaurus form that he transformed into, so he was tanking all of that. So, and these, unfortunately, the Tomb Guardians are built to last. They've got a pretty good AC and good hit points, and the swarms of the Crawling Claws, they've got the resistance to melee attacks. And oddly enough, Mannix becomes the best one for taking out swarms because he's got the magic, like, psychic blade. For whatever reason, neither Theron nor Gillian actually use magic cantrips, so they're not dealing any magic damage. They're just doing regular, like, bonks or crossbow bolts or something, so it's not actually very effective against swarms in terms of, it's a very martial-focused party. So, but that was the, I mean, I don't have much to recap. It was just that entire, I guess we had the Tomb Guardian fight first in the scrying pool, which was very easy. They took out that Tomb Guardian in, like, a round or two. Like, I was pretty shocked. Just nailing those attacks. Even without Theron and Gillian even being in that fight, they took out that fight pretty quickly. Maybe that's what led them to this fight. But then George leaving, like that, it just ended up being a really difficult fight for the players and took up a long, long time. Granted, George had kind of a cool, crazy thing happen with the Slod, but man, I don't know. If I was a player and I saw another player, like, You know, there's a difference between, yes, I want you to role play and have your moment, but like we're in the middle of a fucking battle here and you're going to leave and go start this other fight. Like, damn, I don't know. Hello, Lumpy, Arno. Catching up on more people. Wither's mistake was calling Celeste sweetheart. That's true. Man, she stabbed the shit out of him for that. Withers is from an old time where he thinks it's a term of endearment. Harassed George with the slot in his own sword. So, fun fact, that sword is worse than the slot's basic attack. I actually plugged it into the... Did I close that damn sheet again? I plugged it into the slot's character sheet. Because the sword is a short sword, because George is a dual-wielding fighter. So it's only a 1d6. So even and the Slod's strength is a +3. So even though it's basically a +1 short sword, which if I calculated that correctly is 1d6 +4 for damage and a +8 to hit, which makes it slightly worse than his own claws. But not much. I mean, it's not much of a difference there. So it'd be pretty funny. However, the dickisher thing to do, dicker, let's just say worst thing to do, is for the Slod to fucking hide that sword somewhere in the dungeon. Like, yeah, you could use the sword on George, but the crueler and more sinister thing to do, if we're really going to put our mean DM hat on, is that the Slod just goes and fucking, you know what? It tosses the sword down into, well, that's not actually that dangerous of a place, though, is it? I was thinking they could toss it down into the shaft down here, but that's actually not that dangerous. Although, I think if they go down the shaft without paying the gargoyles, does that make the gargoyles attack? I know they attack if you leave the room. I guess going down the shaft would count as the gargoyles attacking. Because that would be level 4, gargoyle chambers. Gargoyles remain motionless unless provoked. You have to pay them. Where does it say? The gargoyles always know when they're being cheated. If any humanoid leaves the room without offering sufficient coin, any cheated gargoyle springs to life and attacks the cheapskate. Gargoyle also springs to life and attacks if it or its pedestal is damaged in any way. So, I guess it would force you to deal with that room if it does. But I mean, honestly, I'm kind of leaning towards the Slod just fucking tossing that sword down the pit. Like, you don't have your sword now. I'm not used to this kind of punishment for a player. Like, that kind of, like, direct consequence. But honestly, and I love Raymond to death. He's one of my oldest and dearest friends, and I think George is a great player. But I think that's the consequence to what just happened here. You're going to lose that sword, at least temporarily. That is evil. George is one of their best DPS, and he left. And tank, too. He's got 18 armor class and 100 hit points. I mean, yeah, now we know what a fight looks like without George in tight quarters. It's not pretty. It takes the party a long time. And I guess the only thing that really bugs me is that it made that be like the entire session. You know, whereas I thought we'd at least make it a little bit further. But had George not had to deal with the Slod right then, I think we could have done a lot more. And, you know, I'm always conscious about like pacing and timing, and anytime, especially a fight running like, because I'm pretty sure we went to break before the fight started, and then we went till probably like midnight my time. So it was a very long fight. And the bummer, I'm almost tempted to have, well, I guess I can't magically do it because Withers is dead, temporarily at least. The bummer is if the party is keen on their 100% completion rate, the next thing they're going to do is the workshop room, and that's just another fight. And level 2 has been a lot of combat. Level 1 felt really well balanced. We had a little bit of combat, a little bit of exploration, a lot of puzzle solving, some social encounters. Level 1 worked really, really well. Level 2, at least the back half of level 2, has been very, very combat heavy with the Slod, Papazodal skeleton room, the Tomb Guardian and Scrying Pool, Withers' office, and now the workshop. Like 5 rooms in a row of pure combat encounters, which is to me a bit of a drag. I know my party does generally like combat for the most part, but I do try to maintain somewhat of a balance. Because I don't think these tomb dwarves are going to surrender. They're undead, aren't they? Should read the fine print on the tomb dwarf. I actually didn't use these guys yet. Yeah, they are undead. They're not in the business of surrendering. They're not going to last nearly as long as the nice thing. They've only got 14 armor class, average hit points of 45. They're definitely more minion-esque. The party wants to show. I guess the Tomb Guardians would still be in. This is kind of a weird case of how much reactivity do I want in the dungeon, and how much would the Tomb Dwarves be aware of what just went down in this room. I know the party is going to short rest. At least that's what my wife mentioned this week. Is like, you've got a short rest because we lost a lot of shit. Lost a lot of blood, literally. So they're gonna chill in here for an hour. You know what I could do is maybe the start of a short rest. I could have the office. Like if they actually camp out in the office, I can have like somebody knocking on it, like one of the Tomb Dwarves knocks on it to talk to Withers. Just again, just to create some kind of fun like social thing. And then the party can decide what to do from there. You know, ambush him or something, or the Tomb Dwarf can warn the others that Withers was attacked. Is not in there, you know, he'll call out some kind of alarm to where the others can better prepare. You know, I can kind of, I'll try to make it more interesting than just having these guys in their office, like working on their stuff. So I think that could be kind of fun. Level 2 is really combat oriented anyway. I guess it is. I mean, if they find this whole secret half, which my players are basically, I'm assuming, going to find every single secret door in this dungeon because Mannix is built that way. Can't just do fight after fight. Yeah. Get rid of everybody's voting, get rid of the sword. Would Nang Nang let him do that? Ooh, that's a good point, Andy. That's a good point. What does that mean if you're greedy and you want treasure, though? Does that mean you literally have to hold it in your hands, or would you do it like a dragon or like a magpie or something and put it, you know, have like a proverbial nest or hoard somewhere that's yours? You know, does that equate to you literally having to keep it on your body? Because like Slod's not wearing like a trench coat. Although a fucking Slod walking around in a trench coat is cool as hell. I'll table that for another campaign. You know, he doesn't have any pockets. He's just got his skin. So how do you hoard? Like if it was something he could wear, you know, like a hat or something like that, then obviously I think it would keep it on him. But yeah, it probably would. That's a really good point. It does like treasure. In which case, it probably wouldn't toss it down somewhere. And you've got me rethinking that. Reduce the amount of dwarves in the workshop room and just show them how the Guardians are created. That's interesting. They'll definitely see that. They'll see the Guardians get created. Because that's part of the fight here, is that it like opens up and a Tomb Guardian pops out. I could reduce that if I wanted to, not have that Tomb Guardian pop out. Just have it be like half formed. Or I could like reduce its hit points by half. And it isn't really a balance thing. This is more about me just not necessarily wanting to just do all these, like, get to level 3 already. When are we going to get to the fireworks factory? You know, we've spent so much time on this second level. I think I'm going to play around with, so the party's going to short rest in here. We're going to have a dwarf. I'm going to let them get the short rest off, but after that, because, you know, it's about an hour, I'm going to have a tomb dwarf knock on the door, and then the party will determine if somebody, I don't know what the tomb dwarf would basically just knock on the door, and it would have Withers say like enter. So if somebody yells out, you know, somebody like George tries to yell out who is it or something, which I could definitely see him doing. The Tomb Dwarf will immediately know that there's a problem and will run off and basically get everybody together for a fight. But they would probably get everybody, probably just have the workshop be ready to go. I don't think they would actually march on this office because that would be kind of a killing field. Or maybe they would. I don't know. I want to try to make it a little bit more, try to make this fight a bit more interesting in some way. Would the Slot ally himself with a Beholder? I don't know. Does anybody ally themselves with Beholders? Beholders don't ally themselves with people. Beholders lord over people. I expect great peril when the crew faces the invisible Beholder. I agree. Scrimidor. That's going to be an exciting. Again, I want them to get to level 3. That should be a fun thing. And level 3's got a really cool theme where the entire level is this purple mold with eye stalks that come out. And of course, the first thing I'm going to do is have an eye stalk pop out, look at players, and pop back. And most likely George is going to try to attack, the eye or do something. And then immediately I get to roll a D10, which I am going to do secretly because I don't want my players to try and be like, oh, this is going to be the whatever ray. And shoot them with a ray, which has the potential to do 10d10 damage. Although I did notice, if you look at the Beholder stat block, most of the rays don't really matter at all if they're done outside of combat. And this is just a one-time ray that shoots you as kind of an environmental hazard, which is a neat idea, but most of these don't matter outside of combat. Like a fear ray, and it's not the one where you actually have to spend your turn like running away. This is just you have the frightened condition. Or the slowing ray, it just lasts for a minute. These things don't technically matter outside. Like it's a cool effect, like you can feel it happening, but the only ones that really matter outside of combat, obviously the damage ones, which is enervation, disintegration, and death. And then the petrification could matter because somebody would have to make 2 saves or turn to fucking stone. So that's 4 out of the 10 rays, I believe, actually matter. I mean, even the paralyze, like again, all of these only last for an hour. I guess being charmed, that's a weird one to have from an eye ray that pops out of a mold thing. Charmed for an hour. So what, you're a big fan of the mold? It's a neat idea to turn the eye rays into a trap, but if you actually look at the fine print, half the eye rays don't really matter outside of combat. But that'd be a neat idea. For example, if I did that and then because one of their players was like shut down, then the Slot attacked, for example. Like those are the kind of things I could use the Slot for, except it's looking like George will like immediately, like after the short rest, or maybe during the short rest, who the fuck knows, is going to want to try to fight this freaking Slot again. One thing he's going to discover, if he does the short rest and wants to fight the Slot, I think it's going to be fully healed because, well, I know it is, because the Slot can heal 10 hit points around, which means it is the best enemy for hit and run tactics. Slot regains 10 hit points at the start of its turn if it has at least 1 hit point. So, and a round is what, 6 seconds? So it is basically fully healing within like a minute. So, God, even if they don't short rest, I mean, if it escapes, if it basically leaves combat, we get out of turn-based mode, that Slot is like full health. So best case scenario, although worst case, if I'm getting sick of the Slot, is that it always enters combat at full health. So that's an interesting 6,000 healing, yeah. So that is an interesting predicament that the players will have to realize, is that this is not a war of attrition. You have to kill this thing in an encounter, and they failed to do that twice now. However, unless I cheat, which I'm not above doing, it does not regain the use of its spells. It can go invisible at will, but it cannot fear and fireball were the main ones I was using. It can only do that a certain amount of times per day. And if they short rest, it has not been a day yet. So it won't be able to do its really sexy abilities. Instead, it's going to only be able to, which is, again, is why I was hoping to use the slot over the course of like, days and have it really jack with the players. But it doesn't sound like George is going to want that. And especially since it's got one of George's swords, one of his magic, like, character defining weapons. The slot is definitely not going to do that. Shout out to over 20 people watching me just talk about our D&D session. That's greatness. So I can't use its spells. It's just going to have to use its basic attacks. And George is probably going to want to summon the damn thing again, which on the one hand, I could have happen. On the other hand, I have established that any person can resist the effects of the trickster god that's inhabiting you, that's possessing you. I could sit here and roll the actual charisma save if I wanted to, or I can just say, hey, the slot has resisted the effects of the controlling Grung goddess, which means maybe it could throw the sword away. I technically could allow, because it is possible to resist that. And same thing, if George wants to summon it, it could, again with the coins, it could try to resist that again. And I could gently mention to the players, hey, you all realize that, although these trickster gods do alter your very personality, you do have the chance of resisting that kind of forced alteration. Major illusion is a great thing to use. Oh yeah, what is major illusion? Is it major or major image? Right? Yeah, major image. What is major image? That's just a like a hologram, right? I don't think it's the one that does damage, but it could jack with them somehow. You create the image of an object, creature, other visible phenomenon that no larger than a 20-foot cube. The image appears at a spot you can see within range and lasts for the duration. It seems completely real, including sounds, smells, and temperature appropriate to the thing depicted. As long as you're within range of the illusion, you can use your action to cause the image to move to any other spot within range. Ooh, one clever thing it could do is create an illusion of itself, so that it's like actually sneaking up on. It's like doing the same thing. George realizes it's an illusion, for example. What is the range on 120 feet? That is pretty solid. And it can do that at will. So it could always create an illusion. Obviously, I could use it like, the illusion of a, Withers or a Serac or something that the slot could think it could use. But I like the idea of using a major image to create an illusion of itself, sneaking up on George, and then George goes to attack it, and then it's like not there. That'd be kind of a fun way to jack with him. It's kind of a bummer because, I appreciate George's like commitment to hating the Grung and killing them. The bummer is I did want to use the slot in a room or scenario that was kind of challenging and puzzly for the players. Maybe they had to like split up to do it, and then that's when the slot would fuck with them. And that seems like the most fun thing to do. But instead, George is kind of forcing these confrontations, which is technically good for the players. Like, they should have to deal with this creature. He just picked a really awkward time to do it. So I'm not sure. Hey, I forgot to turn off my auto thing again. I don't remember what happened last time. I couldn't actually log in at Streamlabs, so that's why it's doing that. I guess it is sort of a D&D live stream, isn't it? So what I presume is going to happen tomorrow, we're going to short rest. I am going to have a tomb dwarf like knock on the door, and oh shit, George does have the bandana. That's gonna see through the illusion, isn't it? Does it see? Man, that true sight is a. Why did I do that? True sight automatically detect visual illusions. Fuck. He sure does. He sure does. Succeed on saving throws against them. All right. And the slot by now The slot by now knows that George can see invisibility. It knows that much information because it tried to sneak up on George and he saw it when it was invisible. I am trying to play the slot like an intelligent creature, but it is possessed by a greedy trickster god. Ultimately, I mean, the other choice is that I don't let George jack with it yet. You know, I'm the DM. It's my decision on whether this slot is going to appear or not. And it would be straight up insane, given how much of its ass was kicked by George. It would be insane for it to fall into the same trap again. Because it is a fairly intelligent creature. And that would be punishment to George, is that he doesn't have his other sword. He's only got his one sword. He doesn't have the Thorn Blade if the slot isn't appearing. And obviously he's going to be checking everything out. So I may, at least for tomorrow's session, keep the slot in the back burner no matter what. And say the slot fled to lower depths. I think that would be... Because I just don't want to repeat all that yet. And that is punishment enough right there. The other cool thing I could see is if we do let the slot appear and it doesn't have the sword and it mentions the fact that it threw the sword down the hole just to kind of give them an idea. But then I've got the issue of like motivating the players to skip a level, go to level 4 and deal with that. And that's also not necessarily where I want to go. Yeah, I think I'm gonna leave the slot, and George is just without a sword, without one of. I just basically took one of the players' magic weapons, although I don't think he's actually attuned to that one. I'd have to look up my attuned notes, but for whatever reason, I don't believe that one. And I don't know how that works. If you like lose the item, do you lose your attunement to it? Or do you have to you just don't have it, but you're still attuned to it? Let's see, George. Yeah, for some reason his shell sword requires attunement, but the thorn blade does not. So he is actually not attuned to it anyway, so that kind of solves that issue. George also has that staff of the python he's forgotten about. He can summon a giant constrictor snake whenever he wants. So we need to talk about level 3. We're going to assume this is a fight. I may shorten things a bit. The one thing I am thinking about doing is maybe the Tomb Guardian is only like half form, so it's only got half its hit points. So it'll go a little bit quicker. But I don't expect, especially if all the party's here, I don't expect these whites to last, or I think they're whites, to last nearly as long as the fight of the Tomb Guardians and the Swarms. Again, they've only got 14 AC. Everybody's hitting them. Average of 40 hit points. Kalista can one-shot that. Like, they're not going to last very long. So even though this is probably going to be a fight, there's like a 90% chance the players are like going to say, well, we're not going to leave the fucking tomb dwarves here like building traps. We know they're in this room. Let's fight them. The only thing I'm going to do is try to make it like a fun little social outside the box thinking with having one tomb dwarf like knock on the door and the players can try to decide what they want to do from there, knowing that the tomb dwarves will soon realize that they in fact killed Withers. So, or maybe they'll try and play it smart, let the tomb dwarf in, use a deception roll or something. Although they don't know what kind of means the, what I could do is if somebody tries to be something deceptive, the skeletal songbird can, I don't know, make some kind of like warning noise, and the tomb dwarf knows that and like runs away. So that'll probably be a fight. They'll get the Starfallen, which is kind of a weird magic item. That seems, I think I mentioned that last time. It's kind of good for lower level parties, but it does stabilize you if you fall, which is nice, but I believe it requires attunement, which is kind of rough here. Otherwise, there's not actually much treasure, I don't think, in this room. Oh, the other thing we need to talk about before I go to level 3, what does the control gem actually do? Because I am very, very nervous about giving my party a slot under their control, even a slot that is such apparently closely tied to our campaign, one that George wants to kill. They know, a jewel tames the frog. they during this short rest, they'll be able to identify this gem, which they found in Withers' office, which is the reward you get for fighting this battle. Obviously, if you had just left, you wouldn't have gotten that loot. But I'm not sure I actually want to have it be a straight up control gem where you can control the slot. That seems a bit too much to me. So my thought is to have it be where the person who holds the gem cannot be attacked by the slot. It makes you like untargetable, which means whoever's wearing it could be safe from the slot. So you could basically handle it with care. I don't know if I even want to go as far as like you have any control over it whatsoever. However, it's like a safety measure. So if the slot gets loose, the person can have the gem, go after it. They would still have to capture it, but the slot couldn't fight back. And in this case, this item, whoever's got it on them, would not be able to be attacked by the slot, which is still kind of a good item to have, I think. I'm not hopefully like debuffing it too much. I thought maybe I would allow a contested charisma check to maybe do like the equivalent of the command spell or even the suggestion spell. So make it less of a, oh, you just have command over this thing, and make it more of a like, okay, you have to make this roll. Instead of a saving throw, it's a contested charisma check, maybe, because I think that's more interesting. Maybe it'll be a charisma save for the slot, and maybe you could use the command spell on it. Actually, it says wisdom save. I always thought charisma was more willpower. I could change it to charisma save. So I assume the slot is more charismatic. See, George, now I have to spend all my prep time talking about this damn slot instead of talking about the lower levels of the tomb. Oh, yeah, definitely going charisma. It's got a +2 versus a -1. So it could be like I don't know, DC 13 charisma save. That gives it like a 50% chance, a little bit lower than 50% chance to make the save against having the command spell done at it. But I like the fact that command is a little more mechanical because it lasts for 1 round and you can give it like a 1-word thing, and it's only that character who can do it. But it's very powerful. Like that would shut down a very powerful creature. I don't know what the right DC would be for that. But what do y'all think about that? Just having instead of the control gem, literally like you just control this creature, like that's it. There's no attunement, there's no penalties or anything. You just control this creature. That seems way too powerful to me to give to the players. And again, because the slot is still alive and out and about, had it already been killed, that would have been a really funny thing to do. Is like, oh, by the way, you guys could have controlled the slot straight up. Just get rid of the slot. Ozzy doesn't like the slot. I should do a poll. Slot, yes or no? Undamageable by the slot. Well, untargetable is different because that means it couldn't specifically target that creature, but it could, for example, throw a fireball in the room, and then that creature who's got the control gem could still be harmed by the fireball. So that would be a technicality I would allow if we get that far. Mark says maybe require attunement. Also use genie rules on it. Come up with a twisted way to do what the player wants. And everybody has got good slot opinions. Slot must obey whoever possesses this gem. Well, yeah, I already mentioned I'm not doing the rules as written for the control gem because I don't like those rules. Those are bullshit. So instead, I think this command still has a range to 60 feet. I could require attunement. That would be a big deal, actually, if I require attunement. Because the players are all full of items. So that would require somebody to give something up to be able to attune to it. So I'm thinking the rules for this control gem. Let's see, where's Wither's office? I need to write down so I'm consistent. So slot control gem. At the very least, holding this gem is it's the only clue they have is that a jewel tames the frog. So I do like that it has some kind of control power associated with it. I just need to put some kind of limit or saving throw on top of that. I don't like the straight up you can control. And frankly, it's whatever. If a Serac controlled this gem or whoever's got it, it's whatever rules it wants to be. If the slot gets the gem, have it nope the hell out. Right. Yeah, I think it does mention the slot is aware that somebody's got this gem somewhere, which is probably why it was hanging out here. But unfortunately, the players got it first. So holding this gem. How do I want to word this? Makes the person holding this gem cannot be targeted by a hostile. Cannot be targeted by. I'll just put the gray slot. I don't know if it's got a name. Hostile slot. Any hostile actions. And then as an action, the gem holder can use the gem to cast the command spell targeting gray slot, and it's got the command spell rule, so it has to be 60-foot range and the one-word command. And magically, the slot will understand your language. And it just gives you, it doesn't have to be one of those, it just gives you examples. Grovel. And this one is a saving throw, so there would be a saving throw on that. The question is, what kind of save do I want, or what is the DC? You know what? I could have the DC be the person's. I could create my own formula, so based on the person's charisma, because I want it to be a willpower thing, and I think charisma is willpower in the D&D universe. So I could have it be the DC is 8 plus your proficiency plus your charisma bonus, or minus if it's negative. Turn the gray slot with a DC equal to 8 plus proficiency plus charisma. And it's a charisma save for the slot. Because that formula comes out to, for example, if George wants to use it, his charisma is garbage. That would be 8 plus 4 is 12, minus 1 is an 11. So that would be a DC 11 charisma save. Which at that point, the slot's got like a 50-some chance, because it's got a +2. I don't do math, but you all know I don't do math. Chance to pass it, whereas somebody like Gillian's got it. That is a DC of 15, which I think is their highest charisma person. So the only difference is, do I want to require the control gem to require attunement or not? And that might actually determine if anybody is going to bother using the damn thing. Because they saw, and they might just say, like, well, whatever, this is dumb. I might be debuffing this too much. because they know that George can practically almost solo the damn thing. I think I got the idea that it was almost dead. So if they have the whole party attack it, does anybody actually need to use this thing to like shut it down? So I might be going overboard with shutting it down. Willpower was willpower. There's no willpower though. There's wisdom. I mean, like a straight up attribute. There's wisdom, and then there's charisma. And I'm always confused about where willpower lands between the two of those. I think I'm leaning towards charisma because I feel like a sorcerer is like a mutant from the Marvel comics, and that's like all like just straight up your willpower. You know, it's all natural talent. It's not studied and learned from books. So it's all charisma based. So that's why I got the willpower thing from. I'd have to actually look back at the player's handbook. I'm not sure where that lands, but charisma feels right for that kind of thing. And I think wisdom is overused for all the mind stuff. I think charisma should be used a bit more. Level 3. I think you should keep the gem's initial function. The tomb has enough threats. George will probably neglect it or use it to lure the Slod only to kill him, or at worst, it's a boon well earned. Interesting. Abel is here for carrying a torch for the players. That is true. I don't know if they actually mention. I just don't like that there's no limits on the thing. That's very weird. Like D&D always has like saves and attunements and all this other stuff. And this gem, Eric, why do you keep closing the goddamn gray slot character sheet? You're always having to use it. How do they mention the control gems? Implanted in the Slod's brain is a magic control gem. The Slod must obey whoever possesses the gem and is immune to being charmed while so controlled. A greater restoration spell cast on the Slod destroys the gem without harming the Slod. And you can. There's rules for removing the gem from an incapacitated Slod. Okay, that would be quite the weird thing to do. Just obey whoever possesses the gem. I guess the thing I could change would be to eliminate the save for the Slod. It's like having its true name. Yes, Will Slate. Man, y'all are really breaking my balls over this one. Have me a second guess. What about suggestion versus command? I'm spending too much time on this. Stupid Slod. I mean, I already don't plan on having the Slod involved, but I do need to nail the rules for the stupid gem because they did find it and they're going to identify it at the start of the next turn, the next session. So I do need to have this nailed down. Suggestion is you can suggest a course of activity and magically influence a creature you see within range. Creatures that can't be charmed are immune to this effect. Suggestion was worded in such a manner as to make the course of action sound reasonable. That's a good caveat. You can't suggest a creature to hurt itself. So maybe instead of command, you can cast the suggestion. You can use suggestion on it. It's got double concentration. That's a weird typo. Anybody ever notice that in Roll20? Suggestion has double concentration. It also lasts up to 8 fucking hours, though. I would make you concentrate. All right, what do we think about suggestion? Thank you, Blanky. I appreciate that. Well, the interesting thing, Jordan, is that my players are not familiar with slots at all. They have no idea about control gems. So they have no expectations of what this thing can do. The only expectation they have is the clue that they saw that said that was a Serax warning. And I believe the exact quote was, well, we can look it up, but I believe it was, "A jewel can tame the frog." And they're going to find out that this is that jewel. Only a jewel can tame the frog. They don't know to what context that means. They don't know to how much. They don't know what kind of power level that entails. That's all they have to go on. So finding that jewel that tames the frog here is a cool thing to find. But to what extent this item can tame the frog is entirely up to me. And that's what I'm trying to determine. What kind of mechanics are there? Or is it just a free, hey, now that you guys own this thing, you just have this free, like, enslaved NPC that you can use? I don't think my players would do it that way. I think they would literally use it to summon the slot, and then George would just kill it. So I'm probably overthinking this, because I don't think George would ever allow anything other than George is going to kill this thing. But, I mean, I could do suggestion. It lasts up to 8 hours. You could suggest a creature go stand in the corner, and as long as you've got concentration, it would stand in the fucking corner. But again, George would just kill it. Control gem would suggest control. But again, it's not... I haven't identified this thing yet. This is what we're deciding. I haven't said it's a control gem yet. They just... all they know... In fact, did I put it in the chat box? This is all they know right now. It's a fist-sized gray stone. Right now, they don't even know it has anything to do with the slot. I could make this a fucking, pearl of power or something if I wanted to. But this is the connection, is that this is, in fact, the jewel that can tame the frog. But what does that actually mean? I never introduced it as a control gem, though. That's why we have to nail this down right now. We have to nail it down when I identify it and I reveal it and say, here's what it is. As long as I'm consistent with the ruling and make that ruling now, then they're going to accept whatever that is. And anything is going to be a bonus. It's a bonus either way, no matter what they get. Even if it's the weak-ass one that I initially came up with, which is a command spell that the slot gets a save on. That's still a bonus. Now, if I made it attunement, that's when it probably isn't a bonus, because I think at this point, an item has to be pretty damn good to have any of the players switch out one of their attuned items. I'm not giving the players another Amulet of Health. That's insane. So I'm going to change it to suggestion. I'm going to keep the fact that the slot can't harm whoever's holding the gem. Does not require attunement. As an action, the gem holder can use the gem to cast the suggestion spell, targeting only the gray slot. Which suggestion has a way shorter range. It's only 30 feet. And I guess I could get rid of the save. I basically just put it into a mechanical thing where you have to... So the limiter here, if we eliminate the save, the limit is your activity can only be a sentence or two. The slot has to be within 30 feet of you. It lasts up to 8 hours, and it requires concentration. So as soon as you cast a spell or long rest, I think you lose concentration during a long rest. You fucking should if you don't. Then it drops. But I think that's where I'm going. It's a suggestion stone. I mean, I can still call it a control gem. That's still a good level of control. I'm just applying more strict wording about what does it mean when you can control this thing. And what it means is you have to be within 30 feet, you have to use an action, your course of activity has to be limited to a sentence or two, and the activity cannot include making the creature hurt itself. It has to sound reasonable. And then you have to concentrate. Oh, Fireball is way bigger range than Suggestion. But as we determined, the Slod does not get its spells back but once per day. And they just fought the Slod. I fought the Slod and the Slod won. So I will have to track that. And the Slod does not have any of its cool spells because George drained all of them in that fight. So that's where we're with the Slod. We can still call it a control gem. I call it a Slod gem, if that makes you all feel better. I can call it a gray Slod gem. And that'll be the rules for it. Make it painful for whoever uses the gem to play Suggestion. That's interesting. I am a fan of those kind of items, though, that have kind of a risk reward. If you notice, I did that with Kalessa's Blood Drinker Blade, where she can do extra damage, like a divine. She basically has like divine smites built into her blade, but she has to then do that same amount of damage to herself. But the interesting thing is the risk reward is that she rolls separately each time. So she rolls to deal the damage, and then she rolls the same number of dice to inflict the damage on herself. So it's a kind of interesting risk reward there. And I know my wife, and I know that she does that like every time. If there's a risk reward, she's a hard risk. And the adamantium skeleton. Yes, that's the other example. Which that is an example of, I might have gone too hard on that because poor Theron takes damage every time he wild shapes. And that danger of going berserk, which is why George initially left this fight, which is he was a berserk Allosaurus, which I had a feeling everybody was freaking out about, like, oh, how do we deal with this? How do we deal with this? And I'm thinking, my Tomb Guard is going to punch him right out of this form. Like, he's going to be tanking all these hits. And sure enough, that's what happened. Like, they were doing 10 damage because the weird thing is, in dwarf form, he's got such high AC, but as soon as he wild shapes, his AC drops to like a 14 or 15. So it becomes way easier to hit. Becomes Slod-like. All right, we need to move on. We've talked to death about the stupid freaking Slod. I'm so sick of it. So this will be a fight here. I'm not going to spend any time on that. We need to go to level 3. God damn it, level 3. It's already noon my time. We've done this for an hour, and I'm just now getting to level 3. So Kalessa already went down the spiral staircase, and I kind of messed up. If you notice, I described this room and then had to backpedal and be like, oh, and you see an open door. Like, I forgot there was a door here because I didn't actually switch to this room. I was trying to go off memory, and I forgot that it's not immediately opens in there. So I mentioned the fact that there's just an open door there that she could then close. But she saw the back side of room 38, which is, funny enough, like, all the traps are like magically designed and they all activate on their own. For whatever weird ass reason, in this particular trap, there is literally a Tomb Guardian standing there with a lever looking into a window. And I find that just weirdly comical. Like, for all the magicness that exists in this world and all the weird shit that happens throughout this entire dungeon, this one is just a fucking dude with a lever. And the lever makes this room just turn around. Now, it's a nasty room. There's a bunch of bad things that happen in this room, for sure. But I just found that really comical. And the fact that players can very easily find the back half of this room. Since Kalessa is not George, she wisely decided to close the door and step back out. But I think I mentioned there's a crawl space in that room. There was a window, but they couldn't really tell of anything going on in this room. So I kind of described this room. I don't know if my players all want to go down there. Lord knows they've fought plenty of Tomb Guardians recently. But the interesting thing is, if they do decide to go down level 3, it actually connects back up into the main hallway almost immediately because they cannot actually go through here. This is a illusioned wall or transmuted or whatever you want to call it that appears like a window, but it's still a stone wall. So you can't actually go into this room. So the only path you can take, even if you go down the secret spiral staircase, is to go into the crawl space, get to room 40. You see stairs going up, which obviously leads to a hidden door. And that puts you back up into the hallway, which normally you would appear right here if you took the main staircase down anyway. So that's kind of a sigh of relief because I don't have to worry about, the players. I don't have to worry about prepping all these different areas. I'm pretty confident at this point the players do like completing each level fully before going to the next one. That seems like a thing they're interested in doing. They're interested in hitting up all the trickster gods. So from a DM prep point, I can concentrate on prepping each level individually, which is what I've been doing. That being said, they could very easily take the spiral staircase down to level 4 and then level 5. I am prepping at least those like starter rooms of the spiral staircase in case they want to go down and just pop their head out and see what things look like. This was the throne bone room, which I hinted at with the scrying pool when they saw the tomb guardian walking through the doors. That was this door. This is the throne bone room, which is kind of neat because you can have these creepy undead artists painting pictures of things that just happened. So the players, one of them will be like the players getting really hurt from the magic fountain because that's when they took a lot of damage. I was thinking one of the scenes that the blind artists would be painting would be Kaless holding up the Mace of Terror in front of the Slod, but then the Slod standing tall and George actually cowering in front of it as he prepares to flee. So that was kind of a funny big moment of our dungeon crawling so far. So that's a neat thing you can do. And then if you attack them, the zombie T-Rex pops out of the ground, which is a very, very cool enemy as well. So that's level 4. If they pop their heads in there, and then level 5, you can actually enter a hallway that leads to a secret door, as well as a door that leads to the docks and the water. This is when shit starts getting real crazy here. If they end up going all the way down here, taking the boats out, fighting the Aboleth. There's a magic mouth on the outside of this door, which is really funny. If you don't feed it the right crabs, it teleports you to the oubliette room. This is all starting to get really crazy if the party really starts going down and exploring more areas. But I am going to tentatively prepare level 3 going into tomorrow's session. And we're basically looking at, they can totally fight this Tomb Guardian. That should not be a big fight at all. Crawl through this crawl space. Room 40 is pretty fucking funny. If you touch this skull, this golden skull lying on this pedestal, then it springs to life and it just follows you around and it just taunts you. It's just a fucking piece of shit asshole that is immune to everything, I think. It can't be destroyed. It says rendering it impervious to damage and spells. Its curse is too powerful to be broken with any spell other than Wish, which can be used to either destroy the skull or end the curse. But the curse can be ended by feeding gemstones to the skull, which it craves. But it has to be fed 10,000 gold pieces worth of gemstones. I don't know how you'd ever know that. I don't know if it's ever supposed to tell you that. Maybe if you cast an identify spell or something. But it causes disadvantage on all ability checks to that person. So it's horrendously terrible. And obviously forget stealthing, as this thing would just be following them around all the time. I think I do have a little token I was going to use right here. You can see there's my little skull friend. So I can remember to keep the skull on the map, and me as the DM remember to use this thing as it follows whoever would be horribly unfortunate enough to touch this what looks like a treasury skull. That's true. The Grunkog would suggest the Slod get the skull. I don't think the Slod would find its way in here, though. The Slod probably wouldn't know the secret doors very well. So I don't think it would know about the staircases and all that. It would probably stick to the main areas. So that's if they take the spiral stairs, fight the Tomb Guardian, go up the crawl space. Otherwise, they end up here. So either way, they're going to end up basically in this area. You can see I actually put a chain on the map. These two Tomb Guardians, they're just Tomb Guardians, and they've got a chain between them, and they share health, which makes it, that's kind of a classic boss monster or different thing to do in an RPG. Because normally you want to focus fire monsters, although my party seems to want to spread their damage out all the time, which works great for me because monsters last longer and do more damage. In this case, it forces you to basically attack 2 of them, although you can attack the chain, and it's actually not that hard to kill the chain. It mentions that it's got an AC of 18, a damage threshold of 10, and only 5 hit points. So it's not that hard to just target the chain and sever that and get rid of that fight. But otherwise, it's a pretty standard fight. And they only come out, I believe, if you try to move past them. What else is going on here? They'll see the third warning. Let's refresh on that. There's our third warning for level 3. Walk through water with weapon in hand, which is one clue for Area 31. Slake your shadow at the fall. That may be one of my most favorite rooms in the entire dungeon because it's so weird and creepy. 33, there's a silhouetted figure with its back to you, and the idea is you have to, and it mirror images you, and you have to get it to drink from the fountain in order to get the crystal beholder key out of it. But you have to turn around to basically let it turn around to see the fountain. And if anybody sees its face, they have to roll this huge con save or take a shit ton of damage because it's this horrifying visage, which is really nifty. The vulture is the first step, of course, is the I think this is Ejin's room, which is a classic hieroglyphic Indiana Jones Last Crusade. You have to step on the right tiles puzzle, which I think my players did enjoy doing that whenever we did the smaller version of that in Omu. So I actually like this room a lot. You can see it from the past, from the Jackal window, which is one of the first things you can do in this floor. You can basically see one of the Company of the Yellow Banner step on the tile and then die from the locusts. So it's a really neat room. Right the Gods references the statues you have to move. Over here in room 39, and the Walls of History Tell All is a reference to room number 42, which is probably the lamest of the Trickster God tombs. You basically have to just perform a bunch of rituals, which, I mean, it's good that they're not all combat or necessarily all puzzles, I guess. This one, it really is just paying attention and looking at these frescoes, seeing what's going on, and then applying all of those rituals in the right... do you have to do them in the right order or not? Oh, no, it actually says perform the following actions in no particular order. You have to do them in the right order at all. But there's 4 frescoes, and you have to do the 4 things. And then if you do those, the sarcophagus opens, and that's Kubazan's. Otherwise, a bunch of wraiths attack you. Although it does say any character wearing one of the frog masks is polymorphed into a frog. I wonder if that would make George want to attack them. Bracers of archery and arrows is what you get with Kubazan. I forgot what Kubazan's thing is, because that's most likely gonna be their next. Again, if they like completionists, I assume we're going to be handling the northwest corner of level 3. The interesting thing about this dungeon is I run into the same problem as the Skeleton Gate, in that the players initially don't know that they need all these keys to open a door. And this is another situation where they don't know they need 10 beholder keys to make it into this beholder room, as far as I'm aware. And in fact, none of these clues point to the beholder room at all. So I don't know how they're going to figure out that they need to even go in there or do that. If I'm supposed to tease that at some point. Because unfortunately, the way the dungeon is designed, they're probably not going to find this door until they've explored almost everything else. Just looking at the way it's designed. You know, if you see the door early and you see 10 things, you're like, okay, I guess we're looking for these keys. But if you're getting the keys, you don't fucking know. And all of a sudden you see a door and you're like, oh, wait, we're missing 3 keys. You know, and that's a bummer. You have to go back and figure out, okay, what did we miss or what did we not do? And then I could put a hard stop in here. I was originally going to put the skeleton key in this room to entice the players to go in there. But I guess the only thing they'll know is that they haven't found that skeleton key on this level yet. That would be the only clue that they would have. Which I guess at this point they know there's probably a key on each level. A clue in Withers' office. Unfortunately, well, I guess I could add that now. because I already gave him the journal excerpt. What token do you use for the jungle map? So I'm going to DM this soon. Oh, yeah. I think I made I think it actually came with this module. It just came a little like D&D symbol or something that we used. Didn't know the hex crawl. Yeah, because I don't know if they would know that they need these keys. When is the first key that they get? I think there's 10 keys. I really need to make a note about that, where all the keys actually are. 10 crystal keys found elsewhere in the dungeon. Areas 31A, 32, 33, 35B, 37, and 39. So they don't even start seeing the keys until... God, there's not one in 43. There's not one in 42. When did they even get the first key? 33, 35, 37, and 39. It's a while before they even see the first key, which is weird. 30. Yeah, basically the keys are up here in the upper right corner a lot. 31, 32, 33, 35. They're all up here. And then 37 and 39 is this area and in here. Yeah, so unfortunately, the entire northwest corner, you're not getting these beholder keys. You actually don't even know. That's not a bad idea. Jordan. You know, the other option is I do like I did with the skeleton gate and make it a quest and say and don't mention anything on there other than the fact that you treat it like a video game, just like you have a quest journal entry and you found a what are they even called? A crystal eye that looks like it could be a key or something, kind of give them that hint. The beholder does have a name. Its name is Belcorge. Belcorge, the mighty Belcorge. The most beautiful of all beholders. I feel like they're very like they have giant tongues. I mean, I could have Belcorge be like Withers and appear to the players also. Maybe have him appear in an image. I don't know. Is that showing my hand too much? Because how cool is it to have a beholder be this like surprise boss? Or do I want to just go ahead and have it appear? Or I could not have it appear and have it like be the mold, could like form the look of the door, maybe, and have like 10 slots. I love that voice. Thank you, Blanky. I could add some new keys. That's true. The bummer is that where I would add the new keys would be in these areas that don't have the keys, and those are the first areas they're going to. So I'm not going to know how they're doing on key acquisition up until that point. But what I can do is during their last time getting a key, because there are some that hold like 2 keys, is just throwing an extra key. So if they did miss one that I feel like, oh, they just missed it, kind of a thing, and it would be a pain to get back to, then I could definitely throw in like an extra key in the winning one. Although the bummer is I could be bit by that if the party decides to, go back out of the area and they're like, oh, we missed doing that. Let's go do that. And I'm like, well, shit, and I got to put something else there. So that it does have kind of a disadvantage there as well. Put a picture in Withers' room referencing the door and pointing to 10 gems in the holes. Yeah, they are still in Withers' room, so I could just add that as an aside of like, hey, you find one other thing that looks like it might be of note. Strange door. I could even write like level 3 on it and have like a door with 10 keys, and they're all shaped like eye crystals or something. My kid is telling me it is lunchtime. It's like, why aren't you fixing us lunch yet? But I like that idea a lot. I could put a clue in Withers' office, referencing to the level 3 and the keys and the 10 keys, and that at least gives them an idea. And then I can add that as an actual quest. In fact, I've got an empty placeholder one right here. It's a mysterious note. Call that Crystal. What should we call this quest? I want to call it Eyes of the Beholder, but I think that would be a little too telling. Just call it Crystal Eyes. Eye of the Beholder's an old RPG series. One of my first PC games I ever played was an Eye of the Beholder game. I believe that was 2nd edition. Back in the day, there were lots of D&D video games. Now there are hardly any. And we'll take source, destination, source, Mr. Withers' office, destination, Tomb of the Nine Gods, level 3. And the description would be you found kind of similar to what I talked about last time, which because Withers also has notes about the mirror, which is on level 4. Door of Unseen Eyes. That's pretty cool. She is allowed. That's true. Her player name is not Max or Celeste. She is allowed to listen in. Absolutely. I actually really like that. Door of Unseen Eyes. Congrats, Infernus. You win. That quest is immortalized now. You find, what is it, a poster or a note? I don't think so. It's a picture of it on level 3. The only picture we get, obviously, there's the maps, and then there's a picture of that revolving room. It's like a diagram. Unless I'm missing it somewhere else. There's a picture of the blind artist. There's a picture of Bodax. The Bodax! You played Dark Sun. I played one of the Dark Sun PC games. Not to completion. I mean, I was young, too. Like, this was early 90s. So most of these games were pretty damn challenging for me. I think I played, like, Dark Sun. I don't know what the hell it was called. Colon something. But, I mean, they were all the same engine. They were all that, like, Gold Box series. Eye of the Beholder was actually different. That was a first-person. That was more like the Might and Magic games. Yeah, I'm not seeing a picture of it. Let's see. Poster or... Kind of like you found a drawing in Withers' office depicting... What does the door look like? Is it, let's see, 44? A large door with a round mirror set into its surface. Oh, that's confusing because they already found a thing from a mirror. 10 circular indentations, each about an inch across, surround the mirror. Crap. Why do they use a mirror when they have a clue to a different mirror? The player's going to totally get confused about that. And I know the idea is when you do the... when you put the eyes in place, the person gets more unhealthier. You know what? I might change that. Instead of a mirror, it's an eyeball. And as you put the crystal things in place, the eyeball opens more and more until it's fully like staring at you. I think I'm going to change that because I could already see if I was a player, I'd be like, oh, this is the mirror. We need to use our magic passphrases. And that's not at all what this is. Withers has an S. The apostrophe goes after. Found a drawing in Withers' office depicting a large sealed door with a closed eye surrounded by 10 circular indentations. 10 small circular indentations. I imagined it. It's good to imagine good things. Yeah, I am going to change the description, absolutely. It's going to be a large seal. So instead of a mirror, it's going to have a closed eye. That's more thematically appropriate anyway. Yeah, exactly. Jean-Francois. It's a cool name. The eye is going to slowly open and then stare at people. Each eye lights up as it clicks into place. And that's the whole boulder thing, too. It's got the eye in the middle, and then you're putting the eyes around it. That's totally thematic. I just did a better job of doing that door. Let's see. The only words were level 3. That's the clue. So somewhere in this level, large sealed door with a closed eye surrounded by 10 small circular indentations. The only words are level 3. I think that's a pretty good clue. And then when they find the first crystal eye, I'm going to do what I've been doing with the skeleton gate and add them as updates to the quest that you found, this many eyes, and then that will immediately clue the players into, okay, these are the things that we actually need to be finding. So yeah, I don't know how far we'll get. I'm not going to be using the slot at all next session. I don't care what the players do. I'm not using that slot again 3 sessions in a row. We'll probably get that workshop fight done. We'll get down to level 3. It'll be interesting to see if the players use the spiral staircase or the grand staircase. We'll probably have to fight these Tomb Guardians on the chain. We'll see the 3rd pillar here. And hopefully we'll deal with rooms 42 and 43 because neither of them should involve combat. 42, as I said, just following those frescoes, going through the ritual. I guess if they screwed up, it can be combat. And then 43 is a really creepy, like, horror movie thing where they keep going through these drapes and worse things happen. It's just a bullshit room. There's no treasure. It's just a chance to get your fucking head bitten off, which is just really creepy and kind of cool. So hopefully we will do that northwest section because that will help alleviate a lot of the combat heaviness that we've been feeling lately. And frankly, level 3 is not very combat heavy at all. It kind of front loads it with the Tomb Guardians right here. Otherwise, if you're noticing here, there's just a whole lot of environmental challenges, which I think is which I'm really looking forward to, and I think that'll help break the action up quite a bit. All right, 90-minute Crafting Annihilation. I cannot go longer than this. I've got to feed my family some lunch, so that is going to do it for me. Thank you all so much for joining me for the stream, or if you are watching the recording afterward, I always like checking out your comments. I will be streaming tomorrow afternoon, more State of Decay 2, and of course, I'll be here for our Tomb of Annihilation show tomorrow evening. I hope everybody stays safe, stays sane. Thank you all for being here, and I'll see you tomorrow.